The Lion and the Frog. There was a king and queen who had a son and a daughter who loved each other dearly. The prince often went hunting and sometimes stayed out in the forest for a long time, but once he did not return at all. His sister cried herself nearly blind over this, and finally, unable to bear it any longer, she went into the forest to search for her brother. After walking long distances, she grew tired and, looking around, saw a lion standing beside her. The lion was very friendly and looked kind. She sat on his back, and the lion carried her away, stroking her cheeks with his tail to cool them. After they had walked quite a distance, they came to a cave. The lion took her inside, and she was not afraid because the lion was so friendly. They went through the cave, which became darker and finally completely pitch black. After a while, they emerged back into daylight in a beautiful garden. Everything was fresh and shining in the sun, and in the middle stood a magnificent palace. When they approached the gate, the lion stopped, and the princess got off his back. Then the lion began to speak and said, "You shall live in this beautiful house and serve me. If you fulfill everything I ask of you, you will see your brother again." So the princess served the lion and obeyed him in all things. Once, as she was walking in the garden, beautiful though it was, she felt sad because she was so alone and abandoned by the whole world. As she walked back and forth, she noticed a pond with a small island in the middle, and on the island was a tent. There she saw a bright green frog sitting under the tent, wearing a rose petal on its head instead of a cap. The frog looked at her and said, "Why are you so sad?" "Ah," she said, "why shouldn't I be sad?" and told him all her troubles. The frog spoke kindly. "If you need anything, just come to me, and I will help you with advice and action." "But how can I repay you?" she asked. "You don't need to repay me," said the frog. "Just bring me a fresh rose petal for my cap every day." So the princess returned somewhat comforted, and whenever the lion demanded something, she ran to the pond, where the frog leapt back and forth and soon brought her what she needed. One day the lion said, "Tonight I would like to eat a mosquito pie, but it must be well prepared." The princess thought, "How can I manage that? It's completely impossible," and ran out to tell her frog. The frog said, "Don't worry, I will fetch a mosquito pie for you." Then he sat down, opened his mouth wide, left and right, snapped up mosquitoes as many as he needed, hopped around gathering wood shavings, and started a fire. When it was burning, he kneaded the pie and baked it over coals, and in less than 2 hours, it was ready and as good as anyone could wish. Then he said to the girl, "But you won't get the pie until you promise to cut off the lion's head with a sword hidden behind his bed as soon as he falls asleep." "No," she said, "I won't do that. The lion has always been kind to me." The frog said, "If you don't do that, you will never see your brother again, and you won't harm the lion either." So she took courage, took the pie, and brought it to the lion. "That looks very good," said the lion, sniffed it, and began to bite into it right away, eating it all up. When he was done, he felt tired and wanted to sleep a little. So he said to the princess, "Come and sit beside me and scratch me behind the ears until I fall asleep." She sat beside him, scratched him with her left hand, and searched with her right for the sword hidden behind his bed. As soon as he was asleep, she pulled it out, closed her eyes, and with one stroke, cut off the lion's head. But when she looked again, the lion had disappeared, and her dear brother stood beside her, kissing her warmly and saying, "You have freed me, because I was the lion, and was cursed to remain so until a maiden's hand, out of love for me, would cut off the lion's head." Then they went together into the garden to thank the frog. But when they arrived, they saw him hopping around in all directions, gathering small shavings and starting a fire. When it burned brightly, he hopped into it himself, and after it burned a little longer, the fire went out, leaving a beautiful maiden standing there, who had also been under a curse and was the prince's beloved. So they all went home together to the old king and queen, and a great wedding was held. Whoever was there did not go home hungry. The Soldier and the Carpenter. In a town there lived two carpenters whose houses were next to each other, and each had a son. The children were always together, played with each other, and were called Knife and Fork, because those were always laid together on the table. As they grew up, they did not want to be separated from each other. One was brave and the other fearful. Thus, one became a soldier and the other learned the trade of carpentry. When the time came for the carpenter's son to travel, the soldier did not want to leave him, and they set out together. They arrived in a city where the carpenter found work with a master craftsman, and the soldier also wanted to stay and hired himself out to the same master as a servant. This would have been fine, but the soldier had no inclination to work. He lay on the bearskin, and before long, the master sent him away. Out of loyalty, the diligent one did not want to leave him alone, so he also quit and they moved on together. This continued on. Whenever they found work, it did not last long because the soldier was lazy and would be dismissed, but the other would not stay without him. One time they came to a large city, but because the soldier did not want to lift a hand, he was dismissed in the evening, and they had to leave that same night. Their path led them to an unfamiliar large forest. The fearful one said, "I'm not going in. Witches and ghosts jump around in there." The soldier replied, "Bah! I'm not afraid of that yet," and went ahead, and the fearful one, because he did not want to leave him, went with him. In a short time, they lost their way and wandered through the trees in the darkness. Finally, they saw a light. They sought it out and came to a beautiful castle brightly illuminated. Outside lay a black dog, and on a pond nearby sat a red swan. But when they entered, they saw no one until they reached the kitchen, where a gray cat sat by a pot over the fire cooking. They continued and found many splendid rooms, all of them empty except one where a table was abundantly set with food and drink. Since they were very hungry, they began to eat and enjoyed themselves. Afterwards, the soldier said, "Once you've eaten and are full, you should go to sleep." He opened a chamber where there were two beautiful beds. They lay down, but just as they were about to fall asleep, it occurred to the fearful one that they had not yet prayed. He got up and saw a cupboard in the wall. He opened it and found a crucifix with two prayer books. He woke the soldier so that he had to get up, and they both knelt down and said their prayers. Then they slept peacefully. The next morning, the soldier received a violent shove that jolted him awake. "Hey, why are you hitting me?" he called to the other, who had also received a shove, and said, "I'm not shoving you. Why are you shoving me?" Then the soldier said, "It must be a sign that we should leave." When they came out, breakfast was already on the table, but the fearful one said, "Before we touch it, let's first look for a person." "Yes," said the soldier, "I always think the cat cooked and set it out. That takes away all my desire." So they went through the entire castle again, from top to bottom, but found no one. Finally, the soldier said, "Let's also go down to the cellar." When they descended the stairs, they saw an old woman sitting in front of the first cellar. They greeted her and said, "Good day. Did you cook the good meal for us?" "Yes, children. Did you enjoy it?" They went on and came to the second cellar, where a young man of 14 was sitting. They greeted him too, but he did not respond. Finally, they reached the third cellar, where a girl of 12 was sitting. She also did not reply to their greeting. They continued through all the cellars, but found no one else. When they returned, the girl had gotten up from her seat. They said to her, "Do you want to come upstairs with us?" She replied, "Is the red swan still on the pond?" "Yes, we saw it at the entrance." "That's sad. I can't come with you then." The young man had also gotten up, and when they approached him, they asked, "Do you want to come upstairs with us?" He replied, "Is the black dog still in the yard?" "Yes, we saw it at the entrance." "That's sad. I can't go with you either." When they came to the old woman, she had also risen. "Dear mother," they said, "do you want to come upstairs with us?" "Is the gray cat still in the kitchen?" "Yes, it's sitting by the hearth with a pot and cooking." "That's sad. Until you kill the red swan, the black dog, and the gray cat, we cannot leave the cellar." When the two companions returned to the kitchen, they wanted to stroke the cat, but it glared at them fiercely with fiery eyes. There was still a small chamber they had not visited. When they opened it, it was completely empty, except for a bow and arrow, a sword, and an iron pair of tongues hanging on the wall. Above the bow and arrow were the words, "This kills the red swan." Above the sword, "This cuts off the black dog's head." And above the tongs, "This pinches off the gray cat's head." "Oh," said the fearful one, "let's get out of here." But the soldier said, No, let's find the animals. They took the weapons from the wall and went to the kitchen, where the three animals, the swan, the dog, and the cat, stood together as if they were up to something sinister. When the fearful one saw this, he ran away again. The soldier encouraged him, but he insisted on eating something first. After he had eaten, he said, "I saw armor in a room. I'll put on one of them first." When he was in the room, he tried to put it on but found it too heavy. The soldier said, "Come on, let's go as we are." "Yes," said the other, "if only there were three of us." As he said these words, a white dove fluttered to the window and pecked at it. The soldier opened the window, and when it flew in, there stood a handsome young man before them. He said, "I will be with you and help you," and took the bow and arrow. The fearful one told him he would be best with the bow and arrow. After the shot, he could go wherever he pleased, while they would confront the enchanted animals with their weapons. So the young man gave him the bow and arrow and took the sword. So all three went to the kitchen, where the animals were still together. The young man cut off the black dog's head. The soldier grabbed the gray cat with the tongs, and the fearful one shot the red swan dead from behind. As the three animals fell, at that moment the old woman and her two children came running out of the cellar with loud cries. "You have killed my dearest friends! You are traitors!" They attacked them and tried to kill them, but the three overpowered them and killed them with their weapons. As soon as they were dead, a strange murmuring began all around and came from every corner of the castle. The fearful one said, "Let's bury the three bodies. They were Christians. We saw that from the crucifix." So they carried them out to the courtyard, dug 3 graves, and buried them. While they worked, the murmuring in the castle grew louder and louder, and when they finished, they distinctly heard voices inside, and someone shouted, "Where are they? Where are they?" When they realized the beautiful young man was no longer with them, they became afraid and ran away. After they had gone a little way, the soldier said, "It's not right that we ran away like that. Let's turn back and see what's there." "No," said the other. "I want nothing to do with these magic beings. I'll seek my honest living in the city." But the soldier wouldn't leave him alone until he went back with him. When they approached the castle, it was bustling with activity. Horses were galloping in the courtyard, and servants were running around. They pretended to be 2 poor craftsmen and asked for a little food. One of the crowd said, "Come in. Today good will be done to all." They were led to a beautiful room and given food and wine. Afterwards, they were asked if they had seen 2 young men from the castle. "No," they said, but when someone noticed blood on their hands, he asked where the blood came from. The soldier said, "I cut my finger." The servant reported this to the master, who came himself to see them. It turned out to be the beautiful young man who had helped them, and when he saw them, he exclaimed, "These are the ones who saved the castle." He welcomed them joyfully and explained what had happened. In the castle, there was a housekeeper with her 2 children who was a secret witch. Once she was scolded by the Lord, she became malicious and turned everything that had life in the castle into stones. However, she had no real power over 3 other wicked servants who also practiced sorcery. She could only transform them into animals, which then wreaked havoc in the castle. She feared them and fled with her children to the cellar. She had only enough power over me to transform me into a white dove outside the castle. When you two entered the castle, you were supposed to kill the animals to set it free, and as a reward, she intended to kill you afterward. But God ordained otherwise. The castle is redeemed, and the stones turned back to life the moment the wicked witch and her children were killed. The murmuring you heard was the first words spoken by those who were freed. He then took the 2 companions to the master of the house, who had 2 beautiful daughters. They were given to them, and they lived happily ever after as great knights. Thus ends the tale of the soldier and the carpenter, who faced their fears, defeated evil, and found reward and happiness in the end. The Wild Man. Once upon a time, there was a wild man who was cursed and roamed among the farmers in the gardens and fields, causing trouble. The farmers complained to their landlord that they could no longer pay their rent. The landlord called together all the hunters and promised a great reward to anyone who could catch the creature causing these problems. An old hunter stepped forward, saying he would catch the wild man. They had to give him a bottle of brandy, a bottle of wine, and a bottle of beer, which he placed by the water where the wild man washed every day. He hid behind a tree. When the wild man came and drank from the bottles, it made him drunk and he fell asleep. The hunter then tied him up and woke him, saying, "You wild man, come with me. You won't drink like this every day." They took him to the noble castle and placed him in the courtyard. The lord invited neighbors to see what creature he had caught. One of the young lords played with a ball that fell into the courtyard, and the child said, "Wild man, throw the ball back to me." The wild man replied, "You must fetch it yourself." The child said he had no key. "Then go to your mother's room and steal her key," advised the wild man. The child opened the courtyard, and the wild man ran out. The child cried, "Oh, wild man, stay here, or I'll get a beating." The wild man lifted the child onto his shoulders and ran into the wilderness. The wild man dressed the child in shabby clothes and sent him to the emperor's court to ask if they needed a gardener's boy. The child arrived so dirty that others didn't want to sleep near him. He said he would sleep in the straw and went every morning to the garden where the wild man appeared, saying, "Now wash yourself. Now come here." The wild man made the garden so beautiful that even the gardener couldn't do better. Every morning, the princess saw the beautiful boy and asked the gardener's boy to bring her a bouquet of flowers. She asked what his status was, and he replied that he didn't know. She gave him a bag of sweets. Each time he brought back money, he gave it to his lord, saying, "What should I do with this? You need it more." Then she asked him to bring a bushel of flowers, giving him a bag of sweets. He did this again, bringing a goose full of sweets to his lords. The princess thought he had money and didn't. She secretly took him into her chambers, and her parents were angry, putting her to work spinning in the brewery. He worked in the kitchen, helping the cook turn bread and sometimes bringing meat to his wife. In England, a tremendous war broke out where the emperor had to go, along with all the great lords. The young man said he also wanted to go, asking if they had an extra horse in the stable. They replied they had one with 3 legs, which would be good enough for him. He mounted the horse, which went trotting along. Hoosapus, hoosapus. Suddenly, the wild man appeared before him, creating a huge mountain. There were thousands of regiments of soldiers and officers inside. He dressed in fine clothes and received a beautiful horse. He led all his people into the war in England. The emperor received him warmly and requested his assistance. He won the battle and defeated everything. The emperor thanked him profusely and asked what rank he held. The young man replied, "That's not something I can tell you." He rode back with his people from England. Again, the wild man appeared before him and led all his people back into the mountain. He mounted his 3-legged horse again. People said, "Here comes our hero again with his 3-legged horse." They asked him, "Where were you lying and sleeping behind the hedge?" "Oh," he said, "if I hadn't been there, things wouldn't have gone well in England." She said, "Quiet, my boy, otherwise the Lord won't give you anything to eat." And so it went 2 more times, and the 3rd time he conquered everything. He received a wound in his arm. The emperor took his cloth and bandaged his wounds. They urged him to stay. "No, I won't stay with you, and what I am, you won't understand." Then the wild man appeared again and led all the people back into the mountain and mounted his horse. They went home again. The people laughed and said, "Here comes our hero again. Where were you lying and sleeping?" He said, "I certainly wasn't sleeping. Now all of England is one, and there is true peace." Then the emperor spoke of the brave knight who had helped him. The young man said to the emperor, "If I hadn't been with you, things wouldn't have gone well." The emperor wanted to reward him. "Yes," he said, "if you don't believe it, I'll show you my arm." And when he showed his arm, and the emperor saw the wound, he was completely astonished and said, "Perhaps you are God himself or an angel sent by God, and asked for forgiveness for having treated you so harshly." And he gave him all his imperial possessions. And the wild man was redeemed, and stood there like a great king for him, and told him everything. And the mountain was an entire royal castle. He went there with his wife and lived happily until their death. 57. The Children in Famine. Once upon a time, there was a woman with her two daughters who had fallen into such poverty that they didn't even have a bit of bread left to put in their mouths. When hunger grew so great among them that the mother became desperate and beside herself, she said to the eldest daughter, "I must kill you so that I can have something to eat." The daughter said, "Oh, dear mother, spare me. I will go out and try to get something to eat without begging." So she went out, returned, and brought back a piece of bread. They ate it together, but it was too little to satisfy their hunger. Therefore, the mother turned to the other daughter and said, "Now it's your turn." The daughter replied, "Oh, dear mother, spare me. I will go and quietly bring back something else to eat from somewhere else." So she went, returned, and brought back two pieces of bread. They ate them together, but it was still too little to satisfy their hunger. So after a few hours, the mother spoke to them again, saying, "You must die, for otherwise we will perish." In response, they said, "Dear mother, we will lie down and sleep, and not rise again until Judgment Day comes." So they lay down and fell into a deep sleep, from which no one could wake them. The mother, however, disappeared, and no one knows where she went. 66. The holy woman Kummernis. Once there was a pious maiden who vowed to God not to marry, and she was wonderfully beautiful, so much so that her father did not agree with her vow and wanted to force her into marriage. In this distress, she prayed to God that he would make a beard grow on her, which immediately happened. The king, however, became enraged and had her crucified, whereupon she became a saint. Now it so happened that a very poor minstrel came into the church where her image stood, knelt down before it, and the saint was pleased that he was the first to acknowledge her innocence. The image, adorned with golden slippers, caused one of them to loosen and fall down for the pilgrim's benefit. He gratefully bowed and accepted the gift. However, soon the gold slipper was missed from the church, and inquiries were made everywhere until it was finally found with the poor minstrel. He was condemned as a thief and taken away to be hanged. On the way, the procession passed by the shrine where the statue stood. The minstrel requested to enter so that he could bid farewell with his fiddle and pour out the troubles of his heart to his benefactor. This request was granted. But as soon as he played the first notes, behold, the image let the other golden slipper fall, thereby showing that he was innocent of theft. Thus the minstrel was freed from his chains and fetters, and he happily went his way. The holy maiden was called Kummernis. 175. Misfortune. When misfortune seeks someone out, they may try to hide from corner to corner or flee to the open field, yet it still manages to find them. Once there was a man who had become so poor that he had no firewood left to keep his hearth warm. He went out into the forest to cut down a tree, but they were all too large and strong. He ventured deeper until he found one he thought he could handle. Just as he lifted his axe, a pack of wolves burst out from the thicket, howling and advancing towards him. He dropped his axe, fled, and reached a bridge. However, the deep water had undermined the bridge, and at the moment he tried to step on it, it collapsed and fell apart. What could he do? If he stayed, awaiting the wolves, they would tear him apart. In desperation, he took a leap into the water, but unable to swim, he sank. A couple of fishermen sitting on the opposite shore saw the man fall into the water, swam over, and brought him to shore. They propped him against an old wall so he could warm up in the sun and regain his strength. However, as he woke from unconsciousness, wanting to thank the fishermen and tell them his tale, the wall collapsed on him and killed him. 182. The P test. Once there was a king who had a single son who wished to marry, and he asked his father for a wife. "Your wish shall be fulfilled, my son," said the king, "but it is fitting that you take no one but a princess, and there happens to be one nearby. However, I will announce it publicly. Perhaps one will come from afar." Thus, an open proclamation was made, and it didn't take long before enough princesses presented themselves. Nearly every day, a new one arrived, but when asked about their birth and lineage, it turned out none were princesses, and they had to depart empty-handed. "If this continues," said the prince, "I fear I will never find a wife." "Calm yourself, my dear," said the queen. "Before you know it, someone will appear. Fortune often knocks at the door. One just needs to open it." And indeed, it happened as the queen had said. Not long after, on a stormy evening with wind and rain lashing at the windows, there was a vigorous knocking at the gate of the royal palace. The servants opened it, and a stunning girl entered, demanding to be brought directly before the king. The king was surprised by the late visit and asked her where she came from, who she was, and what she desired. "I come from a distant land," she replied, "and I am the daughter of a powerful king. When news of your son's likeness reached my father's realm, I felt a deep love for him and set out immediately to become his bride." "This seems rather dubious to me," said the king, "and you do not look like a princess at all. Since when does a princess travel alone without any retinue and in such poor attire?" "The retinue would have only slowed me down," she answered. "The colors of my clothes faded in the sun, and the rain washed them out entirely. If you doubt that I am a princess, send a message to my father." "That would be too lengthy," said the king. "A delegation cannot travel as swiftly as you. People need the necessary time for that. Years would pass before they returned. If you cannot prove in another way that you are a princess, your wheat won't bloom here, and you should do better sooner than later to return home." "Let her stay," said the queen. "I will test her, and soon we will know if she is a princess." The queen herself climbed the tower and had a bed prepared in a magnificent chamber. When the mattress was brought, she placed 3 peas on it, one on the top, one in the middle, and one at the bottom. Then 6 soft mattresses were spread over them, linen sheets, and a comforter of eiderdown. Once everything was ready, she led the girl up to the bedroom. "After such a long journey, you must be tired, my child," she said. "Rest well. Tomorrow we will talk further." As soon as day broke, the queen ascended the tower to the chamber. She expected to find the girl still fast asleep, but she was awake. "How did you sleep, my dear?" she asked. "Terribly," answered the princess. "I didn't close my eyes all night." "Why, my child? Wasn't the bed comfortable?" "I have never in my life slept in such a bed. It was hard from head to toe, as if I were lying on a bunch of peas." "I see," said the queen. "You are indeed a true princess. I will send you royal attire, pearls, and gemstones. Adorn yourself as a bride. Today we shall celebrate the wedding."